Cool. Hey everyone, thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Yianna. I'll be talking about my time with AR and VR development, leveling up regular reality. So who is Yianna? Whoa, big question. I thought I'd do a little bit of an introduction. So I'm creative, I'm analytical, I love color, and I also love to play video games. So I felt like developing for AR and VR was a very natural transition for me. I'm also curious about everything. So anytime there's a new device, I want to get my hands on it. I started off in digital design and animation, and then I ran a business for 4 years. So I was a UI web developer for a while. That was an interesting experience, but it made me realize I wanted to go into computer science because I have a love of shaders and algorithms and game engines. So I've been doing full stack development and mixed reality for full stack for a few years, but mixed reality for 1.5 years now. And I'm also a STEM mentor and tutor. So I try to mix my mixed reality experience with actually teaching other people as well, which I'll speak more about a bit later. I also try to impart that design thinking onto everybody and the service innovation. So how do you create a product and how do you pitch that product? And I'm always getting my hands on every device possible. So here I'm navigating a maze with my phone as a remote, controlling a Sphero bot. And Sphero are a company, for anyone that doesn't know, who created the BB-8 for the Star Wars movies. So why do I do it? Well, video games. I used to love speedrunning Super Mario. I also love animation, so Miyazaki was a huge influence. And this is something that I find comes in really useful. Coming into computer science as a designer is an interesting experience because people try to put you in a box, right? And I don't really fit anywhere, and that can be confusing. But it's been a real asset when people have needed a really quick website to put online, or some slides, or something that they need to communicate with other people. I also never listened to people who told me I couldn't do it, and I still don't do that. We'll cover some definitions quickly, just because I'll be using a few of these acronyms. AR is augmented reality. So you would have seen a few people live streaming you can see regular reality, or our physical reality, and an overlay of the digital. Virtual reality is anything that's fully immersive. So you're seeing digital space all around you. Mixed reality is a term that developers are adopting. So that actually, for us, covers anything from AR to VR. And XR is an interesting one. I like to think of that as more of a marketing term. So extended reality is meant to cover AR and VR as well. But for my talk today, I'll be using MR. The MR spectrum. So this is, again, an interesting one. So we've got our physical reality here. You put your Hololens on, or you get your phone out and you've got an overlay. Perhaps you're using Pokemon Go, or maybe you're doing some filters over your face. That's when we're getting into that augmented reality space. Then as we go over to the digital reality, we're talking about virtual reality, 360-degree videos, anything that we can put on top of our heads that occludes that physical reality, and we're transported to a totally different world. Developing for Hololens. So I've been using a 1st gen. We're hoping to get a 2nd gen in the next few months, which would be amazing. So I'm using Unity. It's probably been my first time the past 1.5 years using Unity. I used it quite a few years ago, but I used to develop on Unreal as well. Visual Studio 2017 for 1st gen HoloLens. The Azure Cognitive Services, which just allow you to do so many things. People think that it's magic or cheating, but I feel like if you've got face detection and object detection and engine already there to plug in, why not do that for prototypes? Windows 10 and patience, a whole lot of patience. So this is my first HoloLens project, and actually I saw someone earlier before who worked on this with me last year. So a little bit of background. RMIT, one of our associate professors, Fabio, actually spearheaded the first mixed reality course that actually collaborates with Microsoft. I think we're the first university in the world to do that. And we actually all got to choose with a HoloLens or VR. And Alvin, who was part of my team, who's actually working at Zendesk, helped me with 2 other people develop this app. So I'll try to talk you through it. if everything goes well. So I'll probably pause along the way. First thing, as we load up an augmented reality app, you're sort of in empty space. And we found that if you're loading empty space, you can't really anchor yourself. You don't really know where you are. So having this Owlbot companion as our UI, I guess our little interface, always brought us home. So we could position ourselves and not feel so alone in that world. As it was a prototype, we sort of put a 2D UI over the top of it. Here we tried to do a bit of interaction design, and the idea behind this app was actually collaboration. So here it's only myself that you can see using this, but we can actually hook up many different HoloLenses to collaborate on the same project. So in real time, as it pulls a database, we're pinning things and we're updating these pins perhaps with annotations, and whoever else is using this app is able to see that in real time as well. The reason we went with a database is there were some severe limitations, especially using RMIT. I guess IT was a lot of network blocking. So we couldn't actually do a true multiplayer experience just using the HoloLens. So here, which I don't have the sound on because my voice can be funny over this YouTube video, but using our hand all the time, especially to use a keyboard in augmented reality. So if I back it up just a little bit. This is the HoloLens like Gen 1 keyboard. It's not very friendly. It wasn't really thought about for augmented reality. It was just a 2D UI that was placed in our physical world. We talk about something called gorilla arm. So gorilla arm is the fact that I'm standing there air tapping the entire time, and my arm gets really tired doing that. So we want to think about accessibility here. We actually integrated some voice, so we can actually speak our annotations, and although it didn't spell my name correctly, I don't expect it to, it was able to pick that up and annotate that almost immediately. Before, when I had a few people coming up here, we did notice though that because it was so noisy in the room, it wasn't quite picking up our voice commands. The other interesting thing with like cognitive services is that it has natural language detection, and they've actually developed it to get to a place where even if you have an accent, and it can be a heavy accent, it can generally understand everything that you're saying in whatever language it might be that you're speaking. So even if you're not a native speaker of English or Greek or Italian, it's actually able to pick up what you're saying. So yeah, so we've annotated that, which is awesome. And we sort of hid those annotations as well. You'll also see that I do a bit of a misclick, but I thought, okay, I want to do this in one take and I don't want to edit it, so we can delete our pins in real time as well. You'll see around me, we tried to develop a bit of a tool belt. So we didn't want to just port like a 2D UI for augmented reality. We really wanted something that sat with you. So that tool belt, as you walk around, it follows you as well. So we thought that would be kind of neat to have something that felt like it was a part of you, like extending you. We also wanted to do sort of a different layers. So you'll see here it's going through the skeletal system, and then different use cases for other industries as well. I'll pause that one. Why AR? Well, there's a... Sorry, I just lost myself for a second there. So the curb cut effect, I guess making it accessible has positive benefits and effects for everybody. If you've not heard of this term, it's something that I use a lot in user-centered design. So you have a curb. That curb has a lip, right, as we can see to the left and right of this slope. If we think about designing for people that use wheelchairs. So we slope that lip, get rid of that lip, and it suddenly becomes a lot easier for wheelchair users to seamlessly use that. But it also makes it a lot easier for people we didn't even think about. So the curb cut effect would then allow people with shopping trolleys or prams, or perhaps you're on crutches and you're not able to make that step up. That's something that I'm trying to think about with research in augmented reality and our user experience there as well. UX research, which is what I'm sort of basing myself in at the moment as well. We don't have universal gestures. So if you're thinking, is it really worth developing for augmented reality or virtual reality? I think absolutely yes. Like, it's us that will create what the next generation is going to be using. And because we don't have universal gestures like your zoom and your pinch and your, your swipe effects like we have on our iPhones and Androids now, that's something really that you can be the creator for. These are also a couple of just examples of how augmented reality on phones are being used. So, you could create I've got David here who actually created the Bar SK, the one to your right. It's, face detection. You can develop this for Instagram and Facebook. This is accessible for almost anyone to be able to use and create experiences for. Bleeding edge technology. I always find this term really funny. So my associate professor, Fabio, always uses bleeding edge, and I think, it's super painful, it's super unreliable and frustrating, but it's the best fun I've had. And people look at me funny, but, I could be sitting there eating lunch and I'm watching Netflix in the background, and people don't know that. And we also need people like you. So, we want developers of every experience to actually jump in on this, because we need different perspectives, and the more perspectives we have, the more diverse it is, I just think the better the adoption of this technology will become. So I also tutor mixed reality at RMIT. This is an interesting experience. So it's a 12-week project that everyone is tasked with. They get the choice of a HoloLens or VR development, and it's cross-collaboration between degrees as well. And the reason I bring this up is I think that's how I created the first HoloLens app I ever made. So we say it's 12 weeks, but really you're taking like 6 weeks to actually develop it, because the 6 weeks prior to that, you're brainstorming. So this is one of our students who, their group actually created the Scrapheap. I'll play that again. So they wanted to develop this world where you're in a scrap heap, you're picking up different items, and the challenge that I put to them was, how do you make this interesting? Because, I could sit there and pick up items and that's great and throw them around, but what else is there for me as a game? So the little things that they added into this were a UI. So actually tell me what I'm picking up. That's more interesting than just me holding a random object. And then they went a step further and did some animations. So not every object is animated, but the ones that are give you that little surprise. I thought that was a nice touch. You can also transform these. So you can make them bigger, smaller, you can place them, you can even create your own artwork with it. I don't have it here. I thought it was the next slide, but they made like a robot and a koala. The koala looked like a frog, and I thought that was super cute. The next VR experience that was created was Path of Light. So I love to play a lot of Zelda, especially Breath of the Wild, and this was really inspired by, I guess, that artwork, and it's a puzzle room. So not just like an escape room, but the entire room is a puzzle. So you're moving tiles around and you're trying to get an orb through this maze. And once you get it through this maze, because of the way that it was programmed, each node is actually programmed, so you can develop new mazes for it very quickly. It actually lights up your path like a virus, which I thought was also a really neat experience. We also ran RMIT's first mixed reality hackathon. So I might sound a little bit tired today because for the last 2 days, we've been hacking away at mixed reality. We decided that we wanted to do a multidiscipline sort of hack. So generally, when I've been to hackathons in the past, it's usually filled with people like me who have quite a lot of development experience. And, that's awesome. But I've always found that having different perspectives really helped. So we put it to the participants, less than 2 days. They got their choice of HoloLens or VR development, and we wanted to have mixed teams. So you might have heard of the terms hustler, hacker, and we call them designers because I really don't like the hipster term. But your hustlers are basically the marketing people or the people that can pitch your idea and tell that story. So we had a lot of psychology students, we had a lot of educators that joined, people that were more business oriented, and a lot of them didn't have any programming experience. But our hackers were the true gold, I guess, for them. They were able to meet each other, and our hackers put together the programming of that actual development or that app, but our designers were the ones who really innovated on those ideas and were able to iterate through that. So again, I guess I'm pushing the fact that we need everyone. Like it's not just a development world. We also had Microsoft speakers, which is how we helped everybody learn this new technology. So our first day was just full of workshops. We got to learn what these devices were, and honestly, most of the time, especially for our hackers, it was setting up our development environment. So no matter how much time you have to set these up, like it takes months, it takes forever, you're constantly like changing your environment. We also had UX and service innovations. So for anyone who didn't really understand that user experience, we had people there that they could lean on. So we thought that was super important too. And HP also sort of spoke about their devices. So anybody that wanted to use VR had that support. So this was the team at the end that I thought was like, this was everyone that was there. I think a few people actually finished earlier and left early, but there was about 30 of us in total. So there were 5 teams. And I want to share a couple of the prototypes that they put together. So I showed you a few of the students who had 12 weeks to create projects, which amazing work. And these people, Nomnom, who were our winners, they created an app that integrated many apps that we already use, but instead in an augmented reality way. So I'll sort of speak about it a little bit more, and then I'll show you a little video clip of what it actually does. So we have things like fitness trackers, calorie counters. We have many things in the 2D form that can track these sorts of like nutritional things for us. But what they wanted to do was use object detection, and using the Hololens, they were able to detect different things like, I think they used grapes, a packet of popcorn, and an apple. And they were able to tell you different information about that. But they took it a step further. So they didn't want to just tell you a serving size for grapes and apple and popcorn. They wanted to detect how big is this actual apple? How many grapes are there here? And as we hover over it, we're going to tell you how many calories estimated for that serving size. So this is their prototype. I think was pretty neat. So I think they had less than 10 hours to program this, and they were able to give us full nutritional value based on the amount of grapes that were sitting on that table. I mean, I saw them on the floor training models, taking photos of popcorn packets in all different angles, and, you know, they put so much effort into it. I thought it was such a great idea. The next team, our runner-up, was spottycal. So I didn't mention this earlier, but the idea of the hackathon in the first place was we wanted to change the way people learn. So really disrupt education, especially for public schools and those who may not, or regional people or people that can't get their hands on the same education as those living close to the city. So the Farty Cow was really about when you feed a cow something and it farts, what are their farts made of? So you get a periodic table and you're able to sort of mix different elements and then come up with what that cow, emits. So what do they emit into the atmosphere? Again, I'm not sure if anyone's done hackathons here, but the brainstorming phase, especially for me, is usually the longest phase because you really want to nut out what that story is, what that experience is, right? Because that's what you're going to be pitching towards the end of it. And their pitch started with a little drawing of a cow farting, and it was such a clear picture and clear indication of what we were going to get. I'm actually glad the sound is off for this one because it does a very loud farting sound. It scared us so much yesterday. The cow's like even animated and it's wagging its tail. So this team actually found that Microsoft have a periodic table that's already programmed, which was really great, especially for a prototype, because they were able to pull that in, and they already had things like your gaze, your interaction. And what they're doing is they're mixing these elements together. So there was a prompt there that said, oh, this fight is made out of this, this, and this, but what's it missing? So if you got it right, it was, oh yeah, fart, fart. But if you got it wrong, it was the previous prompts. I guess this video also shows, as the person was gazing over different buttons, you saw that some of them were lighting up, right? This is really important with UX and UI. You really want to give feedback to the user. So in augmented reality, a lot of the issues that we're running into with a lot of people developing is that we're just, including my prototype, we're porting 2D UI into a 3D world. But that doesn't really make sense. That's a bit pointless, to be honest. So a lot of the research that I want to do, and that, you know, any of you developers as well, or designers or anyone in the space that wants to, I put it to you, how can we actually create this space that feels natural? Because one thing that I found is people can actually create attachments to holograms. So a hologram is that cow that's floating in space, that digital thing, that's a hologram. It's a digital overlay for our physical world. And if people are forming attachments to these holograms, how can we use this in a positive way to then create our experience in that world? So learning's developing for a HoloLens. It's frustrating, but also really rewarding. The reason I got into development, like back in, I think, MySpace and Geosites days, was because I liked making things happen on the screen. So, you know, custom cursors, the glitter, all that stuff that really, you know, chug the system now, that's the stuff that I really enjoyed doing. If the documentation isn't there, create it yourself. So there was a question before about documentation, and I thought, yeah, that's a good one. Documentation for the HoloLens is often wrong. There is still code up there that we've created pull requests for that has a negative input instead of a positive input, and it flips everything upside down. So that's a lot of fun. And because it's such a new and small community, like the HoloLens isn't accessible for everyone. It's really expensive, and I guess I'm lucky to have the uni to like help sponsor me and support that. But yeah, I think it's really important to share anything that you learn, but that's true of any development, I believe, as well. Triple check your program versions, because a lot of this is deprecated. So we're using a .NET scripting backend, but in Unity 2019, that's been deprecated. So to create it a little bit more, it's unstable. So we use 2017 to 2018 versions. And that's really important because if you're trying to develop and then deploy something, it's just not going to happen. Things will go wrong even when they're going right. Again, true of any development, but I feel like even just before demos, if everything is working fine, you're always going to find those little errors. And stay curious, because I think that's what the most important thing about new technology is. If everyone's going to adopt it, people need to actually develop it in the first place. You know, it's being used in health and some education at the moment, but we really want to make that more accessible for everyone. And be really patient, like really, really patient. That's it. Thank you for having me.